why do critics call The Prisoner of Azkaban the best movie in the Harry Potter franchise? How did director Alfonso Cuaron convince J.K. Rowling to change so many details from the book? And did you know that most of the special effects in The Prisoner of Azkaban didn't use any CGI? Hi there, I'm Peter, and let's take a closer look at the third film in the Harry Potter franchise. Chris Columbus, the director of the first two movies, already a household name for the insanely popular Home Alones 1 and 2, and Mrs. Doubtfire, had a massive job in his hands recreating J.K. Rowling's vision on screen. He was even meant to stay on as director for all of the Harry Potter movies, but right as he finished Chamber of Secrets, he sadly realized that time was passing him by and he didn't have enough energy to raise his own kids. So Columbus passed on the role of director, but still stayed on as a producer for The Prisoner of Azkaban. And here's the key to understanding the complexity of finding a new director. Harry Potter's third book is the breaking point of the whole saga. This is the moment when the story starts to become darker and more dramatic, the point where the main characters mature into teenagers and have to change. That's why it was vitally important that Warner Brothers found someone who both understood the drama and the fantasy of this world and could successfully portray this transition on screen, balanced with a sense of humor. And that's when the talented Mexican director Alfonso Cuaron stepped into the job of directing the films. Now let's take a step-by-step look at what makes The Prisoner of Azkaban so special. The characters. Compared to the previous Harry Potter movies, characters in The Prisoner of Azkaban are more fleshed out, more developed, more human. Just for you to get an idea of how Alfonso Cuaron works with his actors, listen to this. Cuaron's first task for Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and Emma Watson was for them to write autobiographical essays about their characters. The essay had to include important life events such as emotional experience, starting from birth to the moment when they first discovered the magical world. Sounds like plenty of work, doesn't it? Well, the funny thing is that Watson wrote an epic 16 pages. Radcliffe wrote a pretty basic 1, and Rupert Grint, none at all. And when Alfonso Cuaron asked Rupert why he didn't deliver his essay, the answer was short, simple, and genius. Ron wouldn't do it. Well, that sounds fair. Or perhaps Rupert is a bit of a lazy bones. Of course, I'm kidding. Cuaron was very happy with this answer. It showed him that the young actor definitely understood his character. Those essays were the most important piece of acting work that we did on Prisoner of Azkaban, the movie director said. It was very clear that everything they put in those essays was going to be the pillars they were going to hold on to for the rest of the process. Another great touch by Cuaron was changing the script so that the Weasley Twins became more of a unit. Attentive viewers might have noticed that in The Prisoner of Azkaban, the Weasley Twins spoke differently compared to their previous movies. In real terms, they started to finish each other's sentences all the time. It was like they weren't just twin brothers anymore, but one person sharing the same thoughts across two bodies. Exactly how it felt for many when reading the books. Cuaron's decision to add this character-based detail was based on the real-life relationship between the twin actors playing Fred and George. The brothers kept cutting each other off during regular conversations, and that pushed Cuaron to edit the script and allow the twins to end up doing the same thing in the film. Oliver Phelps, who portrayed George, happily shared his experience of working with Alfonso Cuaron. He mentions one particular scene from the whole franchise, the scene where Fred and George present the Marauder's map to Harry. The scene was an especially sentimental and memorable moment for him because of the twins' real-life grandfather. Of all the scenes we did in all the 8 films, that's the one I treasure more than anything, Oliver explained. Because when we got the part, my grandfather started reading the books to try and understand what on earth we were doing. And he always said that scene was when you see our characters for the first time in their own element. Phelps appreciated his grandfather's approval and support a lot, but unfortunately his grandfather didn't have a chance to see the twins on screen, as he passed away some time before the films came out. That's why there's so much sentimental value when it comes to the twins. And let's not forget about the incredible new actors that joined the Harry Potter cast for The Prisoner of Azkaban. Gary Oldman, David Thewlis, Timothy Spall, and Michael Gambon all were fortunate enough to accept a proposal to enter the Wizarding World. One of my favourite scenes in The Prisoner of Azkaban happens to be in the Shrieking Shack, where Oldman, Thewlis, Gambon, and Rickman all face each other in a tense denouement. This is one of those rare moments where actors of that level, some of the absolute cream of British cinema, all appear on set together and do an absolutely fantastic job in a scene enhanced by some great visual effects that aren't overshadowed by the use of CGI. Curious about what special effects I'm talking about? Well, hold on for a bit because we'll come back to that later. For now, let's move on to some other bold changes made by director Alfonso Cuaron. Hogwarts, and costume redesigns. True Harry Potter fans definitely noticed several changes that were made in the design of Hogwarts in the third movie, like Hagrid's hut and the Whomping Willow, which suddenly seemed to fall victim to some kind of relocation spell. Did you notice? Or how about that sundial in the Hogwarts quad, which wasn't mentioned in the books? And it isn't just the geography of Hogwarts shifting like a staircase, but the students' school uniforms too. In previous movies, we see the main characters in their uniforms, all prim and proper while they're at Hogwarts. But in The Prisoner of Azkaban, the creators made some costume changes. Now there were more untucked shirts, uneven ties, and a lot more casual clothes. I'm sure you spotted this change in style, but do you know why the movie creators did that? And more importantly, why would J.K. Rowling approve of any of this? Well, the answer to that is simple. Rowling is a big fan of Alfonso Cuaron, especially after watching his famous movie, Y tu mamá también. She was absolutely thrilled after she found out that Cuaron would be directing The Prisoner of Azkaban. And of course, Cuaron promised that he would respect and keep to the spirit of the books. I had to be very respectful to the source material, but also to the two previous films. But at the same time, I was trying to make something that I could feel my own. And that's what he strived to do. Keep in mind, though, that things that work great in a book don't necessarily adapt perfectly to the movie screen, and vice versa. So any changes that were made to the Harry Potter universe on film still tried to stick to the spirits of the books. Despite the fact that The Prisoner of Azkaban wasn't slavishly accurate, it didn't matter. It managed to capture the audience's attention and capture something more important: the tone of the novel. Long shots and camera movement. These are the key hallmarks of Alfonso Cuarón. It could be Children of Men or Gravity or even his latest film Roma. In almost all of Cuarón's movies, he uses long shots. Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban is no exception. The reason why lots of people love long shots, if they're done expertly of course, is because of the feeling of authenticity. Everything is happening right in front of our eyes without the artifice of cutting around the action. No cuts, the scene is unfolding here and now, and there are plenty of these moments in Cuarón's Prisoner of Azkaban. In dialogues, in exposition shots, during a lesson, the camera always explores the set, breaking unexpected borders. And if the shot isn't really especially long, Cuarón still uses plenty of techniques to surprise us. Like here, in this scene with the mirror. We all know that boggarts represent our fears. So when the camera flies inside the wardrobe and starts showing us the reflection, it gives us the perception that we are inside Harry's fears. And here's another example. In the scene where Hermione shares her secret with Harry about time traveling, we see a long, continuous shot that ends with the camera going through the time turner's mechanism. The movie is full of tiny details in the background, and full of elements and even characters that weren't written about in the book, like, for example, Sirius Black's tattoos or the shrunken head on the night bus. Details like those match the darkening mood of Harry Potter's world. And as long as J.K. Rowling is happy with them, why not expand the wizarding universe? One of the craziest things about Cuarón is his innovative approach in special effects and his love of practical video effects. That's right, there were plenty of fantastic, crazy scenes that barely use any CGI, or even in some cases didn't use it at all. Special effects. From the very beginning of the movie's production, Cuarón stated that he wanted to keep as far away from CGI effects as possible. The night bus, Aunt Marge blowing up like an overinflated balloon, the self-folding aspect of the Marauders map, the Shrieking Shack, and even much of the Dementors' on-screen presence were made with the help of strictly practical effects. Professional illusionist Paul Keeve was even hired on set to help out. In order to make the magical world as true as possible, Keeve and Cuarón consulted with the production team on how to make objects float in midair and move about on their own. But I definitely think that the hardest things to create were the Shrieking Shack and the Dementors. Remember the shack? That rickety old building close to Hogsmeade whose walls and floor were always slightly moving throughout the scene? Well, how would modern cinematographers create such an object? Most probably they would turn to green screen or use tons of CGI, but that's not what Alfonso Cuarón did. It turns out that his team actually built the entire Shrieking Shack from scratch. It was a huge set that was built from this structure that allowed the whole construction to be tilting back and forth, squeaking all the time and the walls moving back and forth, describes Cuarón. Some people got motion sickness just because of the walls moving like that. Doesn't this remind you of how filmmakers like Christopher Nolan approaches his special effects in films like Inception or Interstellar? If you know Inception, and I mean, of course you do, then you must remember the hotel scene with the rotating corridor. Any idea on how Christopher Nolan did that? Well, it's easy. He just rotated the corridor. Nolan's special effects team simply built the entire piece of the hotel, set it on a specially invented rotating system, and spun it round in real time. Quite an old school Buster Keaton approach to movie making. If you guys are interested in breaking down crazy movie techniques and their practical special effects, let us know and we'll make a video about it. And what about the Dementors? How in Hogwarts were they created with practical video effects? Well, the answer is partially. Cuaron hired puppeteer Basil Twist, who used footage of the Dementors' puppets moving underwater as the basis for their flowing movements and floating, which was later converted with a minimum of CGI. That's why the way the Dementors move looks so convincingly real. Cool, huh? All that said, it's almost impossible to imagine that Alfonso Cuaron nearly rejected the request to direct The Prisoner of Azkaban. It's true. It was only after his colleague and friend Guillermo del Toro, also a big fan of the Harry Potter books, spoke to Cuaron that he was convinced to make the movie. So, thanks, Guillermo. Whether or not The Prisoner of Azkaban is your absolutely favorite movie from the Harry Potter series, you have to admit that it definitely captured the spirit of Rowling's universe and set up a powerful mood and style, serving as a key part of the inspiration for all following films in the franchise. That's it for today, guys. Watch good movies, subscribe to our channel, and as always, stay awesome.